and make sure what your organization looks like to funders like this. Just to give you an example, when I worked at Safeway, I worked at the Safeway Foundation, I would have nonprofits send in their 501c3 number. I'd type it in and whoa, it didn't come up as that same organization. So and guess where that file went? Just in the round file. So that's an important aspect to see what other people see when they're looking at your 501c3 number.
Susan, can I add to that, if you don't mind? This might be a good time to talk about being Patriot Act compliant. Nonprofits should also be Patriot Act compliant. I see Giles shaking his head yes. After 9/11, that became very important to the federal government, and we can actually not award any monies to any organization that is not in compliance.
Okay, great. Thank you, Nadine. So how many of you, we heard Marianne talk about all the swag she has, which is good swag. I've seen her swag. How many of you also give away swag? Okay? Ken's kind of working on the swag here, right? How many of you give away volunteers? I know Fremont Bank does a lot of having their employees do volunteers. How many of you say volunteers will give away their volunteers? Okay, good. How many of you do capital campaigns? Ooh, see, capital campaigns, funding capital campaigns. So 2, 3.
Yeah.
So that's sometimes a hard thing for nonprofits to be able to get capital money. A lot of foundations don't like. So 3 who are doing it here. How many do event sponsorships? The golf tournament, my big gala, James, you're kind of like in wishy-washy land here. What's?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not really.
Yeah. Kind of.
Yeah, I'm wishy-washy.
Wishy-washy. So the right pitch. Okay.
Susan?
Yes.
A donor from a donor advised fund can send money to a organization for an event,
Right.
but for anything they receive, meaning the meal or the golf or what have you, they have to pay that out of their own. That's checkbook giving.
Good
So
point.
You can
Good
do
point.
you can do sponsorships as long as you don't receive any undue benefit.
Right. Great. Good clarification. How many fund scholarships? Okay. How many people focus on really what is the core of corporate giving and institutional giving? Program development. Okay. So that gives you a good idea, because not every foundation or corporation is going to focus on things in the same area. So let's talk a little bit about how you guys like to be approached, all right? And when you take grant applications. And I want this to be a little round robin thing. I want you to answer me fast. So do you take ongoing letters? Do you only accept, like Nadine does, applications one time a year through Lynn's? Do you have a formal application online? Or do you take a letter of interest? How do you do it? James.
Nice thing about being on a panel is while the others are speaking, you can regroup on the things you forgot to say earlier. So just really quickly, I did want to mention we are Tri-Valley based, and we're not just a Pleasanton organization, and we work with all types of community-based organizations and nonprofits in the Tri-Valley, or who are touching on the Tri-Valley. That said, to answer the question, we accept grants on an ongoing basis. Previously, we had done grant cycles, but currently we're accepting grants regularly.
So, James, just to clarify, that means somebody can send you an email and say, hey, James, I want you to fund us.
You can, and yes, you can. Absolutely, you can do that.
We're getting down and dirty here. We need to know how we're doing this.
So right now, and to answer that question specifically, we're looking at opportunities. We're setting ourselves up for the next round of grants. We haven't set that period of when we're going to be making those yet, but we are interested in finding out what types of opportunities are out there that we can fund.
David, and then Brian, I'm going to go down to you because we're mixing things up a little bit here. So David, you answer. You answer, David, then Brian.
So we accept grants all year long. With that said, we do only approve grants in November, January, and April. Big reason for that is because our gala is in September, and we don't know how much money we're going to have to give till probably October, and then we can start giving it away. With that said, we have a formal grant application that you can find at pnr-rotary.org, and it's on the bottom left-hand side. It has directions in there. You can email, you can mail it. That has to be filled out. And with those grants, I would say, and I'm sure we're going to say it again, is really try to articulate your value proposition for what your organization does and what they're going to do with those dollars. Because we give everybody an opportunity to speak at our grant approval meetings for 5 minutes on behalf of their grant application, but that's not always enough to convey what you're really trying to accomplish. And that's how we evaluate what we're going to approve, is on what value you're going to provide to the community and internationally, depending on what your grant application is for.
Brian?
Yes, good morning again. On the corporate giving side of things, we do have an online application on the GrantMakerBanks.com website underneath our our community relations tab. So we do have an online application for there, and the requirements are also listed. On the foundation, we do not accept unsolicited applications, so that's going to need to know one of our bank associate staff members or myself or one of the groups of our team, and we will go out there and visit with you to find out exactly what's going on. And the main thing we do that is we want to make sure, again, we want to know who you are, and we want to see if this is something we want to be able to do, and to make sure that the application is done correctly so we can actually get the approval for funding. There may be some cases where we may want to say, let's look at something different or how to make it work. The idea is we want to give away money, we want to support your causes. That's why we want to really get to know you guys individually.
So Brian, you too then will take unsolicited emails that everyone here today is now going to be sending to you and saying, get to know us, correct?
Yes.
Okay, great, thank you. Michelle?
For our Pleasanton Tri-Valley community grants, we award those between December and March. So applications or information packets go out during that time. We have a deadline, and we try to, this year, I have a couple of grantees in the audience, and that was not the case this year, but our deadline, we like to fund everyone moving forward in March. So
Great.
it's not an ongoing for a Pleasanton facility.
Okay, Ken, we're going to go to you, and then Giles and Nadine. And Mary.
So it was me next, okay.
Yep, we're mixing it up.
So in my opening remarks, I was talking about how global AT&T is. Well, you take a step the other direction. I'm the External Affairs Director for Contra Costa County. And as External Affairs, and different corporations hold these rules differently. I'm getting to your question about one. Okay. So External Affairs in AT&T has two different roles. We do government relations on one side, and then the community outreach liaison on the other. So in Contra Costa County, even though we have thousands of employees, I'm the go-to person for most people outside of the company when it comes to government issues, when it comes to nonprofit, education, business. So one of the aspects of me and my counterparts, I have a counterpart, Darren Chan out of Oakland for Alameda County. Our role is really to get to know the community and to be a part of the community. So each of us in these roles are very active in a number of different ways. One of them is really to get to know the nonprofit communities and the needs in those communities. So we do not have a formalized online application process for our local grants. We do accept information from organizations. You could very well get a call from us as we find out about your organization and want to find out more about it. We don't have a lot of corporate dollars to give out, but at the same time, we are working to build relationships across the community so that when our corporate interests match up with your needs, that's when we're able to form that kind of relationship, whether it's through volunteer efforts for employees or corporate grants. And as mentioned, ours normally fall in the $2,500 to $5,000 range for localized type of grants. But our process really does start with that relationship and building an application. When we're talking about our foundation out of Dallas, at that point, for some of our specialized programs, that's where there is a whole pre-screening process and an online application is sent to you. to fill out. You're basically invited to put in an application after a pre-approval process for those type of more major efforts.
Great. Marianne, and then Giles and Nadine.
I have a kind of a mixed message. For our, we are interested in hearing from you at any time of the year. In my business unit, the Diablo area, we advertise our grant making program once a year, usually December, January. For submission in March, we have an online application. What we like to do is have you email or phone us and tell us that you intend to apply, you would like to apply. We do a very quick phone screening. It's so that you won't have to write a grant application that isn't a good match, and so that we won't have to read it. It really works both ways. So we screen before we give out the online link. We make sure that there's a chance of a good match. So we save everybody a lot of effort. We make about 60 grants a year, 50, 60 grants a year through our a responsive program in the Diablo area. Every one of our business units, it's very confounding, I apologize, has a different calendar. We can help you navigate, I can help you navigate that universe. I have a list of our last year's responsive grants here. This list actually contains, we have 2 areas where we make invitations. In the Tri-Valley, we are funding asthma prevention and management, and we're mostly working with the school districts, and we invited grants in that area. And then in Eastern Contra Costa County, we're focusing on perinatal health for mothers and babies, specifically in the African American community where there's a very high neonatal illness rate. Let's see what else I want to say about that. So online application, we coach you through it. We don't have a letter of intent. That'll do it.
So Marianne, just to clarify, that handout, I believe, is at our front. Is it? So if you did not pick up, we have several organizations that brought handouts today.
And let me also say, you will find our email address, Diablo Area Community Benefit, on this brochure. You will also find a website that will give you a little bit more information about our program.
Okay, thank you. Giles.
As I alluded to before, the East Bay Community Foundation is no longer doing responsive grant making, meaning just write us a letter and ask us for money. It's not our business model. It's not the business model of a lot of community foundations. That being said, if you know any of our fund holders, you're always welcome to ask them for a grant because that's what they're all about. And you know, the Community Foundation is just one place that holds donor advised funds. Fidelity, Schwab, B of A, Jewish Community Foundation, a lot of other organizations hold donor advised funds, and if you know of a donor that has a fund, that's where you would ask for a grant, is from them. That being said, we still have one current program going on called the East Bay Fund for Artists, and this is an annual grant cycle, which is for all artistic endeavors. It could be visual arts, performing arts, radio arts, singing arts, etc. I did say last year, as I was getting to know this organization a bit more, I approached Chris Carter here at the bankhead and said that we will do our utmost to make sure that next year we get more applications from the Tri-Valley for arts groups. Again, the only restriction being you either must have your own 501c3 up and running, or you must have a fiscal sponsor 501c3. We do not fiscally sponsor. You could look at the Tides Foundation, you could look at a number of others in the Bay Area who are fiscal sponsors. So that is our grant-making priority and status right now.
Okay, 2 questions. Does everyone understand the fiscal sponsor and how that works? Everyone understands that there is a fee that they take if they are a fiscal sponsor to apply on your behalf. Second thing, just a clarification, Giles, I know you have program officers.
We do.
Could you just talk, because that to me would be an area of getting to know, as many of us have said. Why don't you talk about the program officer role for a second?
Our program officers are those individuals who consult with our fund holders, with our donor advised fund holders, our corporate fund holders, and they have expertise in a particular area. It may be environments, arts, healthcare, education, so on. And they, when approached by a donor, and the donor says, I'm either unsure where I want to give, or I know I want to give, but I don't know what charities are doing the work that I'm interested in. They help them refine that search and bring it down to individual organizations. We oftentimes are approached by donors who say, We're going to be charitable, we don't know where. So we'll walk them through a process, a values education, if you will, and even including families. This is great with young families and children, maybe teenagers, to talk about, well, what's important to you may be very different than what's important to mom and dad. And we'll go through that and come up with a family giving plan. That's maybe 30% of our overall fund holders. The other 70%, very self-directed. We hardly ever hear from them. They go online, they make their grants, they're very knowledgeable, they use GuideStar, they use Charity Navigator, they do their own research and find out where they want to make their grants, and we simply are writing the checks for them. I would encourage you to find out more about the East Bay Community Foundation. Please drill down on our website. Lots of great information. It'll tell you who we are, it'll tell you what we do. More importantly, it may tell you what we don't do. So please take a look.
And Nadine.
I want to start off with the home campaign. Remember, this is the employee giving campaign. That cycle starts every year on Halloween, and it runs to the first Friday in December. It's good to know that, because that's when the 6,000 employees of the laboratory are making their decision on where they want to give a contribution. And it's also a good time to remember that maybe prior to that decision, your organization, if you've received monies in the past, have access to who those employees are, to send them a nice note indicating how you use the money through the previous year and how much you welcome the money coming the next year. So that's the home campaign, that's the cycle. The other program, remember, is the corporate giving program through our management company. That's the $100,000 that they give out annually. That's a simple application process. And I keep saying that it's simple because for the amount of time that you put into filling out that application, you're going to be thrilled if you receive funding, and you're not going to be upset that you took 20 minutes out of your day to fill out an application if you don't. So that application is available through the LIN's website, Lawrence Livermore National Security, typically about June, and it's open until typically about August. It doesn't have a defined period of time, but pretty much if you start looking in June, flag it on your website, make sure you want to fill it out. And I really appreciate what we heard David say from North Rotary. When you're articulating your need for that application process, remember this: somebody is reading that application. Tell your story. Most people don't really want to fund for paper products. I can't tell you how often we hear, well, we want to give a celebration after such an event, and it'd be really helpful if we could have the best party ever, and we want matching cups and saucers. People don't want to fund for that. We want to hear what your need is, how it can be transformative. So again, that's a simple application process. So hopefully, again, I've made the distinction between the home campaign and the LIN's corporate giving program. Thank you.
Okay. No paper products, remember that. Okay. So Nadine, let's just clarify one thing. You know, how do you get into the home campaign? I mean, people, you've talked about if you're a recurrent person, but how do you start that process?
Sure. That's a great question. There's a myth out there, because remember, I told you we've been around for 40 years, that the laboratory keeps a list of organizations that we give money to. The laboratory does not keep a list. What we have through technology is a pull-down menu. That pull-down menu is populated by what the employees have said that they want to give to. That pull-down menu also is Patriot Act compliant and fulfills all the obligations that one would expect from an entity giving money to it. So there's no organization on that pull-down menu that should not be there. So that is the distinction between the mythical list that we have and the pull-down menu. So any nonprofit organization anywhere in the country, for example, if an employee has their mother living in Michigan and they believe that the healthcare, maybe through Hope Hospice, an organization similar to Hope Hospice that we have here, Hospice in Michigan, is worthy of a donation, that employee can make that donation to that entity. But for the most part, most of the money stays here in the Tri-Valley and in San Joaquin Valley as well. But hopefully that answered your question. You need access to employees. That's what you need. You need to be able to know employees and to be able to tell your story to your friends, your colleagues, those people that work at the lab. Individuals are making the decisions, not the laboratory.
And so just to clarify, because I think the home campaign, really quite frankly, is an easy thing for every single nonprofit in this room to at least get on the list. It's not hidden in the super block, as you just heard that. It's actually, something for an employee at the lab can add you. And they can add you when the campaign starts, is that correct? Okay, so at the beginning. So thank you, Nadine. Okay, so are you filling out your cards? Are you starting to think of some questions? We'll have some of our Alliance members start to pick up the cards. Let's do a quick little round robin thing again, which means